Hello and welcome to another episode of UK Media Warrior, and today we're looking at the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle film, Out of the Shadows. Now this is part 2 of what looks like it's going to be a trilogy of Turtle films, as they are working on the third one already. I didn't see the first one, so keep that in mind as I review this one. Okay, so I haven't seen the first one, but I've heard a lot about it. I went to see this one because my wife wanted to see it, and she really enjoyed it. As a kid in the 80s, 90s, I watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon series all the time. I really liked it. And when I was like 17 or 18, I worked in a store. I was in charge of the toy department there, and it was all the craze. I mean, it was literally ridiculously a craze back then, to the point that I could wheel out a trolley full of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys to put on the shelves. Before I got from the lift to the shelf section, mothers would cram around and take everything out of the trolley to go and buy for their kids. And obviously that got even worse at Christmas time, so it was that big of a fad back then. But this film, it has a lot of detractors. It's not done that well on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's like just about 30% at the moment. Although people do tend to agree that it is slightly better than the first one. As I say, I haven't seen the first one, but this one, I did enjoy it. It was fun. It is just a fun film, and you can't take it too seriously. You really can't, because if you do, it's going to be a bad film and you're going to be disappointed. But if you go in there just remembering what the cartoon series was like, remembering what the comics were like, then you're going to enjoy it, because it really does bring to life the 90s cartoon that I remember. It has all the characters I loved. It's got Krang, Shredder's back, Bebop and Rocksteady are there, Casey Jones, April O'Neil, everyone's there, all the turtles are there. Does it have its bad points? Yes, it does, but it still doesn't detract from the fun. And I found myself watching it and smiling and giggling at some of the antics that the turtles do, especially Mikey, of course, who's the comic relief for the turtles. And he seems to really only be there to make sure April doesn't get too close to Casey, as obviously Mikey still has a big thing for her. The action scenes are over the top, as you would expect, and it does introduce some new characters. As I say, Casey Jones, Stephen Amell, stars as that one, and he's certainly playing a different vigilante this time than we see him play in The Arrow. And we see Krang arrive with the Technodrome. Now let's start with Casey Jones. Now, Stephen Amell is obviously the Arrow from the successful TV series, and I love the Arrow, and I love Stephen Amell. I think he's a great actor. Does he make a good Casey Jones? Well, yes and no. Casey, from what I remember from the cartoon, obviously I'm dredging through old memories here, but from what I remember in the TV show, Casey Jones was really violent, angry, almost a psychopath. But he was a psychopath on the side of good. Now, Stephen Amell plays this guy as a guy who supposedly has anger issues, and that is mentioned in the film. Although you don't really get to see that side of him. He growls a couple of times, but even that's quite light-hearted growling, and then he quickly gets over it in a second or two. Is he violent? Well, yes, in the action sequences, obviously he is. But I liked him as Casey Jones. I think he'll be great in that role, and I think he'll be good in the next film as well. So he's a slightly more light-hearted Casey Jones. He smiles more. He's more affable. You like him. You quickly get behind him, and he comes over great on screen. But that's just Stephen Amell. I mean, the women all seem to drool over him like my wife does. But I just like him because he's a good actor and he's great in fight scenes. Krang and the Technodrome, you see them towards the end of the film, and it's the Technodrome you remember from the cartoon, which is pretty cool. Although it's hovering in the air over New York as it's being built, so that's a bit weird. But Shredder, to me, Shredder is the disappointment in this film. The Foot Clan break him out of prison, or break him out of the transport that's taken him to prison, but then you don't see him fight. Throughout this entire film, he doesn't fight once, and he only has his helmet on once at the very end, before he gets frozen by Krang. How can you have Shredder in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle film and not have him fighting the Turtles? Well, that's just ridiculous. The Turtles take on the Foot Clan a couple of times. Casey takes on the Foot Clan. And to be honest, actually, when you get down to it, there aren't really that many fight scenes. I mean, there's a lot of action. There's a car chase with the Turtles in their trash truck, which is pretty cool because I remember that toy. And the toy had manhole covers that fired out of the front grille. It's exactly what they've got in the film, so that's pretty cool. But as to big fight sequences, as I think about it, really I can only think of two. The Turtles take on Rocksteady and Bebop on a plane where they're fighting them, and then at the end they fight Krang. But that's really about it. Although, as you're sitting there watching it, it doesn't affect the film in any way. It's just they don't actually when you think back afterwards, they don't really fight much. But it's not really a problem. The interaction between the Turtles is fantastic. Each one of the characters is their own character. They each own their own persona, their own personality. And that's good, that's cool. I was a little bit worried that perhaps they would all be pretty much the same. And in the TV series, they are pretty much the same. They've all got different names and they've all got their specialities. But other than Donatello, who's obviously the tech wizard, the others are pretty much interchangeable in the cartoons. But in the film, they're very, very individual. And that's great. Now, April O'Neil. Megan Fox. Let's face it, Megan Fox is probably one of the most beautiful women in the world today. She is absolutely gorgeous. But I think it has to be written in the contract, in her contract. Every film she stars in, she has to have a scene where she's showing off her body or being sexually promiscuous or something like that. Because every film I've seen her in, there's a scene like that. For example, I think it was the second Terminator film, first or second Terminator film. When you first see her, she's draped over this motorbike in tight shorts, polishing the chrome. I mean, it's probably like every man's fantasy, but every film I see her in, there's at least one scene where she's like that. It must really piss off the feminists of the world when they keep seeing her like this, because it's like arguing against them. But in this scene, in this film, there's a scene where she starts off disguised as this sexy businesswoman to get close to Dr. Baxter Stockman, the evil scientist in this movie. And she wants to get close to him so she can download stuff from his laptop. And she's dressed up, as I say, in a wig, glasses, a jacket, trousers, and a white shirt. So she goes and talks to Baxter Stockman. He hands off the laptop to some bloke, so she has to follow him through a mall. And she notices in the mall there are all these young women dressed like sexy schoolgirls, miniskirts, white tops, that sort of thing. So she thinks to blend in, she'll change. So she's walking through this mall and she walks into this store, grabs a miniskirt off a rack, ties up her blouse underneath her boobs, and then the next second the camera cuts away while she's still walking and the black pants she was wearing have vanished. We don't know where they've gone, but they're no longer there and she's in the miniskirt. And it's like, well, that's weird. That is just really, really weird. But you do notice, is it? And it is like quite a blatant screw up by the editing department, really. But that's Megan Fox for you. She had her scene, she has to have it, That's it. So that's fine. Bebop and Rocksteady are fantastic. They really do encompass everything you remember from the cartoon. They look amazing, and the CGI is absolutely fantastic. In all the scenes they're in, it really hits the mark. But after a while, and they are in the film pretty much the entire film, the shtick of them and their catchphrase, and they seem to really have only one catchphrase, it just gets a bit old towards the end, and you're really ready for them to be put down and laid to rest. They're funny, but it just gets old very, very quickly. And that's really about it. This is probably going to be one of my shortest movie reviews. There isn't really a lot happens in this film. The Shredder gets broken out, the Turtles try and stop it but fail. Shredder gets beamed over to Krang, who uses him to basically find 3 parts of some sort of teleportation device that's going to open up a portal and allow Krang and the Technodrome to come through. He does that. The Technodrome starts to come through. Actually, it reminded me very, very much of the end of Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters. I don't know if you recall anyone who's seen that film, but at the end of Ghostbusters, you've got the four Ghostbusters, standing at the bottom of a really tall skyscraper building. They go in the building, get to the top, fight the bad guy with this huge cloud that's hovering around the top of the building, and the bad guy's at the very, very top of this building, and they take him down. In this film, the Turtles, out of the shadows, they finally reveal themselves to the police, and they finally get the police on their side. And at the end of the film, where the Technodrome is coming together above one of these tall skyscrapers, the Turtles arrive at the bottom of this big skyscraper building. They're rushed into the building by the police. They make their way to the top of the building, and they get onto the Technodrome, and they fight Krang, and manage to make the Technodrome go back to the other dimension where it initially came from. Very reminiscent of Ghostbusters. I was wondering if they actually ripped that from Ghostbusters, now I'm thinking about it. But anyway, that's pretty much the story. Right there, that's the story. But it's, as I say, it's a very fun film. Gave me some laughs. A lot of critics are slamming it, saying, the plot's not that great. Well, it isn't. The acting's a bit shallow. Yeah, okay, some of them are. I mean, the woman who plays the police chief, anyone could have played that role. You've got Vern Fenwick. He doesn't really do much in this film. April's Cameron May doesn't do much at all, and he's a bit annoying at times. Well, that's really it. I can't really say too much about it because I really did enjoy it. So, like I say, one of the quickest and shortest movie reviews ever for me so far. But go and see it. You'll have a laugh. And even if you come out thinking, well, that was a bit shallow, you'll realise you still smiled and you still laughed watching the Turtles flip and fight their way around New York, through the sewers, eating pizza, watching basketball games from the rafters. It's just a good make you smile film. So that's it. That's it. Go and watch it, have fun, enjoy yourselves, and we'll see what the third film is going to be like. But if you enjoyed this very quick review, please share it on Facebook, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube for some more film reviews down the line. You guys take care, and I'll see you later.